The morning of Queen Elizabeth's funeral dawned gray and somber over London. Westminster Abbey stood like a fortress of grief, its ancient stones bearing witness to another royal farewell. Inside, the world's most powerful leaders sat in reverent silence, their faces masks of appropriate mourning. But William, the Prince of Wales, found himself watching something entirely different unfold before his eyes. Camilla sat in the front row, her black hat casting shadows across her face. She had been the queen consort for such a short time, barely 8 months since Charles had ascended the throne. Many still viewed her as an outsider, the woman who had caused so much pain to Diana years ago. The press had been watching her every move, waiting for any sign of inappropriate behavior or emotion at this most solemn of occasions. As the Archbishop of Canterbury began his eulogy, William noticed something peculiar. While everyone else maintained their somber expressions, occasionally dabbing at their eyes with handkerchiefs, Camilla's lips seemed to curve upward ever so slightly. It wasn't a full smile, but it was unmistakably something warmer than grief. William shifted in his seat, trying to get a better view. He had always been observant, a trait that served him well in his royal duties. His grandmother had taught him to watch people carefully, to read the room, to understand what wasn't being said. Right now, what he was seeing didn't make sense. The Archbishop spoke of the Queen's dedication to duty, her unwavering faith, and her love for her family and the Commonwealth. It was a beautiful tribute, one that brought tears to many eyes in the congregation. Even William felt his throat tighten as memories of his grandmother flooded his mind. She had been his rock, especially after his mother's death. She had guided him through his darkest moments and celebrated his brightest achievements. But Camilla's expression remained unchanged. If anything, that hint of a smile seemed to grow more pronounced. William began to feel uncomfortable. Was she not taking this seriously? Did she not understand the magnitude of what they were laying to rest? His grandmother had been the longest reigning monarch in British history, a woman who had dedicated her entire life to serving her country and people. As the service continued, William found himself unable to focus on the beautiful music or the moving prayers. His attention kept drifting back to his stepmother. He studied her profile, trying to understand what he was seeing. Her hands were folded neatly in her lap, her posture perfect, but there was something in her demeanor that seemed almost peaceful, content. He couldn't quite put his finger on it. The congregation stood for a hymn, and William rose with them, but his eyes remained on Camilla. As she stood, he caught a glimpse of her face more clearly. The expression he had noticed wasn't inappropriate joy or disrespect. It was something else entirely, something that made him pause and reconsider his initial judgment. After the service, the family followed the Queen's coffin in a solemn procession through the streets of London. Millions of people lined the route, throwing flowers and calling out their final farewells to their beloved sovereign. William walked behind his father, his wife Catherine beside him, their children too young to fully comprehend the historical significance of the day. But even during this most public of moments, William's mind kept returning to what he had witnessed inside the Abbey. There had been something in Camilla's expression that didn't align with grief or duty, or any of the emotions one might expect at such an occasion. It was almost as if she knew something the rest of them didn't, as if she was holding on to some secret knowledge that brought her comfort. Later, at the private burial service at Windsor Castle, the family gathered in the smaller, more intimate setting of St. George's Chapel. This was where the Queen would be laid to rest beside her husband, Prince Philip. The service was shorter, more personal, attended only by close family members and a few longtime staff. As they stood around the grave, William watched Camilla again. The mysterious expression was still there, softer now, but unmistakable. She stood close to his father, offering him quiet support, but there was something in her bearing that suggested she was drawing strength from some inner source that the others couldn't access. The final prayers were said, the last notes of the bagpipes faded across the Windsor grounds, and slowly the family began to disperse. William lingered, partly out of respect for his grandmother, but also because he was still puzzling over what he had observed throughout the day. As the family gathered for a private reception afterward, William found himself in conversation with various relatives and close friends of the Queen. Everyone spoke of their memories, their gratitude for her service, their sadness at her passing. The atmosphere was one of celebration mixed with mourning, as is often the case when someone has lived a long and fulfilling life. But William noticed that Camilla moved through these conversations with an ease that surprised him. She wasn't putting on an act or struggling to find the right words. She seemed genuinely comfortable, as if she belonged in this moment, in this family, in this legacy. It was a stark contrast to how she had appeared in public during her earlier years as Charles's wife, when she often seemed uncertain or defensive. During a quiet moment, William found himself standing near the window, looking out at the grounds where his grandparents had spent so many happy years together. He was lost in thought when he heard a gentle voice behind him. "She was remarkable, wasn't she?" Camilla had approached without him noticing. Her voice was warm but respectful, and when William turned to look at her, he saw that same peaceful expression he had noticed throughout the day. "She was everything to me," William replied honestly. "I can't imagine the world without her." Camilla nodded, and for a moment they stood in comfortable silence. Then she spoke again, and her words would stay with William for years to come. "She told me something once," Camilla said quietly. "Something I think you should know. She said that the greatest gift she could give to the family was peace. Not just the absence of conflict, but real peace. The kind that comes when everyone knows their place, when old wounds are healed, and when love wins out over everything else." William looked at her more closely, beginning to understand that there was more to this conversation than simple condolences. "She spent the last few years of her life making sure that would happen," Camilla continued. "She worked very hard to bring the family together, to heal the divisions that had caused so much pain. She wanted to leave behind a legacy of unity, not just duty." As William listened, he began to realize that what he had interpreted as inappropriate contentment during the funeral might have been something entirely different. Perhaps what he had seen wasn't disrespect or indifference, but rather a deep sense of fulfillment. Perhaps Camilla's peaceful expression came from knowing that the Queen's final wishes were being honored, that her last great work was complete. The reception continued around them, but William found himself seeing everything with new eyes. He watched as Camilla moved between conversations, how she interacted with different family members, how she supported his father while also maintaining her own dignity. He began to understand that what he had witnessed that day wasn't the behavior of someone who didn't belong, but rather someone who finally knew exactly where she belonged. As the evening drew to a close and the family began to say their goodbyes, William felt a shift in his understanding. The mysterious smile, the peaceful expression, the quiet confidence. It all made sense now. Camilla hadn't been indifferent to the gravity of the occasion. She had been honoring it in her own way, carrying out what she saw as the Queen's final instructions, to be a source of stability and peace for the family during their time of loss. But there was still something more, something William sensed, but couldn't quite grasp. As he drove home with Catherine and their children that night, he found himself thinking about his grandmother's legendary ability to see the bigger picture, to understand people's motivations and potential even when they couldn't see it themselves. Had she seen something in Camilla that others had missed? Had she been working toward something specific in her final years? These questions would linger in William's mind, setting the stage for discoveries that would change his understanding of not just Camilla, but of his grandmother's final years, and the careful, deliberate way she had prepared for this transition. The funeral had been just the beginning of a much larger revelation, one that would unfold in the weeks and months to come. 3 weeks after the funeral, William was going through his grandmother's personal effects at Windsor Castle. The Queen had been meticulous about her belongings, keeping detailed records and leaving clear instructions about what should be preserved and what could be distributed among family members. It was emotional work, handling items that held decades of memories and history. Catherine had offered to help, but William felt this was something he needed to do alone. Each room in the Queen's private apartments told a story of her life. Photographs of family gatherings, gifts from world leaders, personal mementos that had meaning only to her. He moved slowly through each space, taking time to remember and to honor the woman who had shaped his life so profoundly. In her private study, William found himself drawn to an antique desk that had belonged to Queen Victoria. His grandmother had used it for her personal correspondence, and William knew it contained drawers full of letters and documents that she had deemed too private for her official papers. The palace archivists would eventually need to go through everything, but William wanted to check first for anything that might be particularly sensitive or personal. The first few drawers contained exactly what he expected: thank you notes from charities, personal letters from old friends, recipes she had copied from magazines. But in the bottom drawer, tucked away behind a collection of fountain pens, William found something that made him pause. It was a leather portfolio bound with a ribbon and labeled in his grandmother's careful handwriting, "For the family's future." Inside, he discovered a series of letters, all in the Queen's hand, dated over the past 5 years. They weren't addressed to anyone in particular, but rather seemed to be a private record of her thoughts and plans for the monarchy's future. The first letter was dated shortly after his grandfather's death in 2021. In it, the Queen wrote about her grief, but also about her determination to use her remaining time to secure the family's stability. She expressed concern about old divisions, particularly the lingering tensions surrounding Camilla's place in the family and the monarchy. "I have watched this family struggle with change for too long," she had written. "The mistakes of the past, the pain that was caused, the misunderstandings that have festered. These cannot continue to define us. I am getting older, and I may not have much time left to set things right. I must use whatever influence I still have to heal these wounds." William read with growing fascination as his grandmother detailed her observations about each family member, her concerns about their relationships, and her strategies for bringing them together. She wrote extensively about Camilla, and what she had observed was far different from what William had expected. "Camilla has suffered more than people realize," one entry read. "She has been vilified for choices made decades ago, but I have watched her carefully these past years. She loves Charles deeply and genuinely. More importantly, she understands duty and service in a way that cannot be taught. She has never sought the spotlight, never tried to overshadow anyone else, and she has supported Charles through his most difficult moments without complaint." Another entry, dated just 6 months before the Queen's death, was even more revealing. "I have decided that Camilla will be my greatest ally in ensuring this family's future stability. She has proven herself time and again, but more than that, she has the wisdom that comes from having lived through great challenges. She understands loss, forgiveness, and redemption. These are the qualities this family will need." William turned the page and found what appeared to be notes from private conversations the Queen had held with Camilla over the past 2 years. The content was extraordinary. His grandmother had been systematically sharing information with Camilla, family history, insights about each family member's personalities and needs, advice about navigating royal protocol, and most importantly, her vision for how the monarchy should evolve. "I told Camilla today about William's tendency to carry too much responsibility," one note read. "He has been this way since Diana's death. He feels he must protect everyone, which sometimes prevents him from accepting help or seeing the good intentions of others. I have asked Camilla to be patient with him and to find ways to show him that she is an ally, not a threat. William felt a shock of recognition. His grandmother had understood him better than he had realized, and she had been working to bridge gaps he didn't even know existed. He continued reading, finding similar insights about Harry, about Charles, about the various challenges each family member faced. But it was the final letters that truly took his breath away. They were written in the last months of the Queen's life, as her health was declining but her mind remained sharp. In them, she detailed specific plans for how Camilla should support the family after her death. "I have given Camilla access to the private photo albums," one letter explained. "She now knows the stories behind the important family moments, not just the public events, but the private joys and struggles that make us human. When the time comes, she will be able to help preserve these memories and share them with the younger generation." Another letter described how the Queen had been teaching Camilla about the various charitable patronages and their personal significance to family members. "Camilla understands now why certain causes matter to each of us. She will be able to help maintain continuity while also encouraging growth and change where needed." The most revealing letter was dated just 2 weeks before the Queen's death. In it, she wrote about her final conversations with Camilla and the specific role she wanted her to play during the funeral and transition period. "I have asked Camilla not to display overt grief during the public ceremonies," the Queen had written, "not because she doesn't feel it, but because I need her to be a source of strength and stability for the others. Charles will be overwhelmed with his new responsibilities. William will be processing his own grief while also worrying about everyone else. The younger family members will be confused and sad. Camilla must be the calm center that holds them all together." William realized with stunning clarity that what he had interpreted as inappropriate contentment during the funeral had actually been Camilla following his grandmother's specific instructions. She had been playing a role that the Queen had carefully prepared her for, not the grieving daughter-in-law, but the steady, supportive presence the family would need during their darkest hour. But there was more. The Queen had also given Camilla specific information to share with family members when the time was right. Personal messages, private memories, and insights that would help them process their grief and move forward together. "Tell William," one letter instructed, "that I was proud of the man he became, but I was even more proud of how he learned to balance duty with compassion. Remind him that strength sometimes means accepting help from unexpected sources." For Harry, there was a different message. "He has always felt different, always struggled to find his place. Tell him that being different is not a flaw. It's a gift. The monarchy needs people who see the world differently, who can connect with those who feel like outsiders." William spent hours reading through the letters, occasionally having to stop as emotions overwhelmed him. His grandmother had been more strategic and forward-thinking than he had ever imagined. In her final years, she hadn't been simply maintaining traditions. She had been actively working to ensure the family's survival and success in a rapidly changing world. The portfolio also contained practical information that the Queen had wanted Camilla to know, details about family relationships, historical context for various traditions, and guidance about how to navigate the complex dynamics that existed within the royal household. It was like reading a manual for being a royal family member, written by someone who had spent 7 decades mastering the role. One of the most touching discoveries was a series of photographs that the Queen had selected specifically for Camilla. They showed private family moments, Christmas mornings, birthday celebrations, quiet conversations between generations. Each photo had a note attached, explaining its significance and the story behind it. "This is from William's first Christmas after Diana's death," one note read. "He was trying so hard to be brave, but he was just a child missing his mother. Charles was struggling too, not knowing how to help his sons through their grief. In the end, it was Harry who made William laugh that day, and suddenly the healing could begin. Family means helping each other through the impossible moments. As William looked through these carefully curated memories, he began to understand something profound about his grandmother's final gift to the family. She hadn't just been preparing Camilla to be a supportive royal family member, she had been creating a living repository of the family's emotional history, someone who could help future generations understand not just what happened, but why it mattered. The final document in the portfolio was a letter addressed to the entire family, meant to be read after the Queen's death. In it, she explained her actions and her hopes for the future. I have spent my last years trying to give you the greatest gift I could. A family that is truly united, not just by duty, but by understanding and love. I chose Camilla as my instrument in this work because she has lived through her own struggles and emerged with wisdom and compassion. She knows what it means to be misunderstood, to be given second chances, and to find redemption through service to others. I ask you all to see her not as an outsider who joined the family, but as the bridge I built between our past and our future. She carries with her the stories and wisdom that will help you remember who you are, while also helping you become who you need to be. William closed the portfolio and sat in silence for a long time. Everything he thought he knew about the past few years had been transformed by this discovery. His grandmother's death hadn't been just an ending. It had been the culmination of a carefully orchestrated plan to secure the family's emotional and spiritual future. But more than that, he realized that Camilla's peaceful expression during the funeral hadn't been mysterious at all. She had been carrying the weight of his grandmother's final wishes, holding on to secrets and responsibilities that no one else could understand. Her smile hadn't been inappropriate. It had been the expression of someone who knew she was fulfilling a sacred trust. As he prepared to leave his grandmother's study, William felt a profound shift in his understanding of his stepmother. He had always been polite and respectful toward her, but he had never truly accepted her as a full member of the family. Now he realized that his grandmother had not only accepted her, but had chosen her as the keeper of the family's most precious gift, their ability to love and support each other through any challenge. The question now was what to do with this knowledge, and how to help the rest of the family understand what their grandmother had been working toward in her final years. William carried the weight of his discovery for several days before deciding how to proceed. The revelation about his grandmother's relationship with Camilla and her carefully laid plans had fundamentally changed his perspective, but he wasn't sure how to share this information with the rest of the family, or even if he should. The decision was made for him when he received an unexpected phone call from Camilla herself. She asked if they could meet privately, saying there was something important she needed to discuss with him. Her voice carried a note of urgency that surprised him, and he agreed to visit her at Clarence's house the following afternoon. When William arrived, Camilla greeted him in the small sitting room where she and his father often took their morning tea. She looked tired, as if she hadn't been sleeping well, and William noticed that she seemed more subdued than usual. They exchanged pleasantries about the family and the ongoing adjustments to their new roles, but William could sense that she was building up to something significant. "I know you found your grandmother's letters," Camilla said finally, her directness catching William off guard. "She told me you would, eventually. She said you were too observant and too thorough to miss them." William stared at her, processing this revelation. "You knew about the portfolio?" Camilla nodded. "She made me promise to tell you everything if you discovered her papers before I had a chance to approach you myself. She was very specific about how this conversation should happen." She paused, seeming to gather her courage. "Your grandmother was an extraordinary woman, William. What she did for this family in her final years. It was the most generous act I've ever witnessed." Over the next 2 hours, Camilla shared the full extent of her relationship with the Queen during those final years. The story that emerged was far more complex and meaningful than even the letters had revealed. It had begun, Camilla explained, with a simple conversation about gardening. The Queen had invited her for tea at Windsor, ostensibly to discuss a charity event they were both attending. But as they walked through the gardens afterward, the Queen had begun asking probing questions about Camilla's life, her regrets, her hopes for the future. She could see through people like no one I've ever met, Camilla told William. Within an hour, she had understood things about me that I had never articulated to myself. She knew I was carrying guilt about the past, about the pain that had been caused during Diana's time. But she also knew that guilt was preventing me from being the person this family needed me to be. The Queen had made it clear that she believed the family's greatest threat wasn't external criticism or changing social attitudes, but their inability to truly forgive and move forward together. She had identified Camilla as someone who could help heal those wounds, but only if she was properly prepared and supported. What followed was essentially a masterclass in royal family dynamics, taught by the most experienced monarch in British history. The Queen had shared stories about previous family crises and how they had been navigated, insights about each family member's personality and needs, and strategies for building bridges across old divisions. She taught me to see your father's vulnerabilities, Camilla explained to William, not as weaknesses, but as places where he needed extra support. She helped me understand that his dedication to duty sometimes made it difficult for him to express his emotions, and that my role was to create safe spaces where he could be human as well as royal. The Queen had also been surprisingly frank about her own mistakes and regrets. She had admitted to Camilla that she felt she had been too distant during Diana's struggles, too focused on protecting the institution to adequately support the person. She was determined not to repeat those mistakes with future family members. She told me something I'll never forget, Camilla said, her voice growing soft with emotion. She said that the monarchy's greatest strength had always been its ability to evolve while maintaining continuity, but that required people who understood both tradition and change. She thought I could be one of those people because I had lived through both great happiness and great sorrow. The Queen had been particularly focused on preparing Camilla to support the younger generation of royals. She shared insights about William's protective instincts, Harry's struggles with his identity, and the challenges that Catherine faced as someone who had married into the family rather than being born to it. She wanted me to understand that each person who joins this family brings unique gifts, but they also face unique challenges, Camilla explained. She felt that I could help future family members navigate those challenges because I had faced them myself and emerged stronger. One of the most touching aspects of the Queen's preparation involved sharing family photographs and the stories behind them. She had wanted Camilla to understand the emotional history of the family, not just the official version that appeared in biographies and documentaries. Your grandmother showed me pictures of you and Harry as children, Camilla told William. She talked about how difficult it was to watch you both struggle with your mother's death, how she wished she could have done more to help. But she also talked about your resilience, your determination to honor Diana's memory while still building your own lives. The Queen had been particularly proud of how William had balanced his grief with his growing understanding of his royal duties. She had told Camilla stories about conversations they had shared, moments when William had shown wisdom beyond his years, times when his compassion had guided important family decisions. She wanted you to know, Camilla said, that she saw Diana's best qualities in you, the ability to connect with people, the desire to use your position to help others, the strength to stand up for what you believe in, but she also saw your grandfather's steadiness and your father's intellectual depth. She believed you represented the perfect evolution of the royal character. As Camilla spoke, William began to understand the true scope of his grandmother's final project. She hadn't just been preparing Camilla to be a supportive family member, she had been creating a bridge between generations, someone who could help preserve the family's emotional legacy while also facilitating its continued growth. The conversation also revealed the personal cost that this role had required of Camilla. She had spent years being criticized in the media and by the public, often unfairly, while simultaneously working to prove herself worthy of the family's trust and affection. The Queen's guidance had been invaluable, but it had also been a tremendous responsibility. "There were times when I felt overwhelmed by what she was asking of me," Camilla admitted. "The knowledge she was sharing, the trust she was placing in me, it felt enormous. But she helped me understand that this wasn't about me proving my worth. It was about me accepting my place in something larger than myself." The Queen had also shared her concerns about the monarchy's future challenges. She worried about maintaining relevance in a rapidly changing world, about connecting with younger generations who might question traditional institutions, about preserving the family's unity in an era of intense media scrutiny and social media judgment. She believed that the monarchy's survival depended on its ability to remain both timeless and timely, Camilla explained, to uphold the values and traditions that give it meaning while also adapting to serve each new generation's needs. She thought that required family members who could serve as bridges, people who understood both where we've been and where we need to go. As their conversation drew to a close, Camilla shared one final revelation that put everything into perspective. The Queen had asked her to wait a specific amount of time after the funeral before having this conversation with William. She had wanted the immediate grief to subside so that her grandson could process this information clearly and objectively. "She knew exactly how long it would take you to find those letters," Camilla said with a small smile. "She said you would be thorough but respectful, that you would take time to process what you found before acting on it. She was very proud of your judgment and your integrity." The Queen had also left specific instructions about how to share this information with other family members. She wanted William to decide when and how to tell Catherine, believing that his wife's perspective would be valuable in determining how to proceed. For Charles, she had left a separate set of documents that Camilla would share with him when the time felt right. "As for Harry," Camilla said carefully, "she left letters for him too. But she wanted you to decide when he might be ready to receive them. She hoped that someday the family could be fully reunited. But she understood that might take time." William left Clarence House that evening with a completely transformed understanding of the past several years. His grandmother hadn't simply been aging gracefully and preparing for her death. She had been actively working to secure the family's emotional future, using every tool at her disposal to heal old wounds and prevent new ones. More importantly, he now understood Camilla's role in a completely different way. She wasn't just his father's wife or even just a member of the royal family. She was the custodian of his grandmother's final gift to them all, the knowledge and wisdom needed to remain united as a family while also serving their country and the Commonwealth. The peaceful expression he had noticed during the funeral now made perfect sense. Camilla had been carrying the weight of enormous responsibility, but she had also been sustained by the knowledge that she was fulfilling the final wishes of one of history's greatest monarchs. Her smile hadn't been inappropriate. It had been the expression of someone who knew she was helping to secure something precious for future generations. In the months that followed, William watched as Camilla gradually began to implement the Queen's vision. She was subtle about it, never claiming credit or drawing attention to her role, but he could see her gently encouraging conversations between family members, sharing appropriate stories and memories, and creating opportunities for healing and connection. The family gatherings became warmer, more natural. Old tensions seemed to dissipate as people found common ground they hadn't known existed. Catherine, in particular, developed a close relationship with Camilla, drawn by her stepmother-in-law's genuine warmth and her wealth of practical advice about royal life. William realized that his grandmother had been right about Camilla's unique qualifications for this role. Someone born into the family might have taken their position for granted or been too close to old conflicts to bridge them effectively. But Camilla brought the perspective of someone who had earned her place through patience, dedication, and genuine love for the family she had joined. The greatest testament to the Queen's wisdom came during the first Christmas after her death. The family gathered at Sandringham, as they had for decades, but the atmosphere was different. Instead of the formal, sometimes strained politeness that had characterized previous gatherings, there was genuine warmth and easy conversation. William watched as Camilla moved through the group, checking on the children, listening to family stories, sharing her own memories when appropriate. She had become exactly what his grandmother had envisioned. Not a replacement for anyone, but a bridge between past and future. A living reminder that love and understanding could triumph over even the most difficult circumstances. As he reflected on everything he had learned, William felt profound gratitude for his grandmother's foresight and for Camilla's willingness to accept such an enormous responsibility. The smile he had noticed at the funeral had indeed been significant. It had been the beginning of the family's healing, carefully orchestrated by a monarch who understood that her greatest legacy wouldn't be the length of her reign, but the strength and unity of the family she left behind.